In the heart of the dense forests and rugged terrains of North America, two mighty empires clashed, one seeking to extend its reach across the vast wilderness, the other determined to protect its foothold in the New World. This wasn't just another skirmish. It was the beginning of a series of events that would change the course of history. The French and Indian War, fought from 1754 to 1763, was more than a conflict between France and Britain. It was the precursor to the American Revolution, a battle over land, resources, and power, played out on the frontiers, where native tribes, colonial militias, and European armies collided in a struggle that would leave a lasting imprint on the fate of a continent. To understand the significance of the French and Indian War, we need to go back to the mid-18th century. North America was a patchwork of colonies and indigenous nations, with two major European powers, France and Britain, vying for control. The French controlled vast territories in the interior, stretching from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi River, while the British had established thriving colonies along the eastern seaboard. The stage was set for conflict, but what truly ignited the flames of war were the competing ambitions for the Ohio River Valley. The Ohio River Valley was an area rich in resources and trade potential, and both the French and the British saw it as crucial for their expansion. The French, who had strong ties with Native American tribes in the region, wanted to secure their fur trade routes. The British, on the other hand, sought to expand their colonial settlements and open up new trade opportunities. The Native Americans, often caught in the middle, had their own interests in protecting their land and way of life. In 1753, tensions began to escalate when the Virginia governor, Robert Dinwiddie, sent a young George Washington on a mission to warn the French about encroaching on British territory. The message was clear: leave the Ohio Valley or face consequences. The French response was equally defiant, and soon, the first shots were fired in what would become the French and Indian War. The war didn't begin with large-scale battles between British and French armies. Instead, it was a series of skirmishes and surprise attacks, with British and French forces relying heavily on local militias and Native American allies. George Washington, at just 22 years old, found himself in the thick of it, leading a small British force that was ambushed by French soldiers and their Native American allies at Fort Necessity in 1754. This early defeat highlighted the challenges the British would face in trying to assert dominance over the French in the wilderness. Over the next few years, the war raged on, with both sides suffering victories and defeats. The British, though outnumbered and unfamiliar with the terrain, slowly began to adapt to the unconventional style of warfare required in the dense forests of North America. Meanwhile, the French, who had the advantage of a strong network of alliances with Native American tribes, used guerrilla tactics to harass British supply lines and settlements. The tide of the war shifted in 1757 when Britain appointed Lord Jeffrey Amherst and General James Wolfe to take charge of the British forces in North America. They implemented new strategies and increased the number of British regulars, setting the stage for a decisive shift in the conflict. One of the most iconic moments of the French and Indian War came in 1759, the Battle of Quebec. The French, led by the charismatic General Louis-Joseph de Montcalm, had fortifications high up on the cliffs overlooking the city, giving them a significant advantage over the British forces. The British, under General James Wolfe, launched a daring attack on the steep, narrow paths leading to the city. Wolfe's forces scaled the cliffs under the cover of night, catching the French off guard. When the two armies finally met on the plains below, the battle was fierce, but Wolfe's tactics would ultimately prove victorious. Both Wolfe and Montcalm were mortally wounded in the battle, but it marked the beginning of the end for French control in North America. The British had captured Quebec, and with it, the heart of French Canada. The French would never recover their stronghold, and the war entered its final phase. With the fall of Quebec and the subsequent British victories, the writing was on the wall for France. In 1763, the war officially ended with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. France ceded nearly all of its territories in North America to Britain, including Canada and lands east of the Mississippi River. Spain, which had allied with France toward the end of the war, was forced to give up Florida to Britain, but in return, Spain gained Louisiana. For the British, the war was a double-edged sword. While they emerged victorious, the cost of the conflict was staggering. The British government had incurred massive debt, and the war had strained relations between the British and their American colonies. To recoup some of these costs, the British imposed new taxes on the colonies, such as the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts, which would eventually lead to widespread discontent and, ultimately, the American Revolution. For the Native American tribes, the aftermath of the war was equally devastating. The French, who had relied on alliances with indigenous nations, were no longer in a position to offer protection or support. The British, on the other hand, proved to be less sympathetic to Native American concerns. This led to uprisings, such as Pontiac's Rebellion in 1763, as tribes resisted British encroachment on their land. The French and Indian War was more than just a battle for territory. It was a turning point that reshaped the world. It set in motion a series of events that would lead to revolution, independence, and the birth of a new nation. As we look back on the footprints left by this conflict, we see not only the clash of empires, but the resilience of those who fought for control of their land and their future. The story of the French and Indian War is a reminder that history is often written in the most unexpected places, along the frontier, where the echoes of past conflicts continue to shape our world today. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Footprints of History for more fascinating stories from the past.